watching Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Julia Kim. These are the latest headlines on the continent. The Islamic State Group claims responsibility for seizing the northern town of Palma in Mozambique. Thousands have fled, and it's the latest attack in an escalating Islamist insurgency sweeping the region. Tensions erupt between students and the government in South Africa over free higher education. Our correspondents on the ground went to find out whether cancelling student debt is a viable option. And later on in the programme, we catch up with DR Congo music star Fabregas le métis noir in the lead up to the release of his first French-language album. But first, the Islamic State Group has claimed responsibility for last week's deadly attack on northern Mozambique. The town of Palma in Cabo Delgado province, now a ghost town after its 75,000 residents fled the violence. The government confirmed on Sunday that dozens of people had been killed. Militants reportedly gunned down and beheaded civilians and set fire to buildings. Now, Palma lies just 10 kilometers from a multi-billion-dollar gas project run by energy giants, including France's Total. The past 3 years has seen a growing insurgency targeting this region, but this latest attack marks an escalation that appears to have caught the government by surprise. Well, earlier we spoke to Tom Bowker, who's the editor of Zitamar News. I asked him why the government has been discouraging communication.
I think they're probably panicking and they are losing control. The one thing they really don't want is for the impression to be given that they're losing control of the situation. But I think that's the reality of what's happening up there. They've been discouraging or banning people going to Cabo Delgado, journalists going to Cabo Delgado, for really the duration of the conflict. We tried to send someone up there 2 or 3 years ago. The conflict started in late 2017. It was made clear to us that journalists weren't going to be allowed there. For the last 12 months, they've definitely been not allowing any journalists to go up there. There was a recent softening on that stance. A couple of networks managed to get journalists into Pemba and even to Palma. The BBC went. But yeah, I've also heard that they're now stopping all journalists going to Pemba. If you were to go to Pemba, you'd be able to speak to refugees who were there and saw what happened on the ground. And it may be that the government and the government forces didn't cover themselves with glory, and that the stories that journalists would be told would not reflect well on the government.
Now, of course, this latest attack getting a lot of attention because of this huge gas project run partially by Total and other big energy companies. Can you tell us more about Total's role in the region and in the growing insurgency as a whole?
Well, yeah, Total is at the head of the biggest project, not only in Mozambique, but it's as everyone likes to say, the biggest private investment ever in Africa, $25 billion worth of project finance going into the liquefied natural gas project there. Nevertheless, it's kind of an economic island out there on the Afungi Peninsula. There have always been questions over how much development it's really going to bring to Mozambique and even to the region. But yeah, Total has huge influence now in Mozambique as this big investor. But they don't call the shots. They can only defend themselves as far as it goes. They can't bring troops into a sovereign country. They've been criticised today for not helping the mercenary company, which has been fighting on behalf of the government against the insurgents. But Total are in a tight spot, and when they bought into this project with the insurgency was already going on, but it's got far worse since Total came on the scene.
And what do you mean when you say it's gotten far worse?
The intensity of attacks, the frequency of attacks, but also this taking of whole towns was something which really only started last year, a bit further south, down along this area in coastal Cabo Delgado where the insurgency is happening. Insurgents took the towns of Bilibiza and Kisanga, but then they also last July took Mocimboa da Praia, which is a significant port town, which is also significant to the Total project. And they haven't given it up since then. The government has failed to regain control of that town, and now the insurgents have taken Palma. So things, I guess 2 or 3 years ago, we would have hoped that the government would get it under control, that the growth of the insurgency would be reversed, but the opposite has happened.
Moving on now, and salvage teams have freed a massive container ship stuck in the Suez Canal. Since Tuesday, the Ever Given had been blocking one of the world's most vital waterways, holding up an estimated $10 billion in global trade per day. Well, helped by a high tide, a flotilla of tugboats managed to wrench the bow of the vessel from the canal's sandy bank. Egypt's president has praised the result, posting on Facebook that Egyptians have succeeded in ending the crisis. The country's lost at least an estimated $95 million in tolls since the start of the blockage. South African Union of Students are calling for a nationwide university shutdown and the writing off of all student debt. One man was killed by police during protests at Johannesburg's Wits University, though other parts of the country did remain calm. Now, tensions between students and the government flare up every year. Our correspondents looked at whether free higher education is really an option there.
In Kailicha, thousands dream of going to university. Azola has already completed an undergraduate degree but was unable to get funding for this year. Her studies cost more than €2,000 annually.
There was no possibility of taking out a loan because there was no way that my family would be able to pay it back, and under whose name would it go under.
She has tried raising money herself through a social media campaign but still owes more than €1,000 to the University of Cape Town.
Education should be free. Like, we shouldn't be facing this challenge every year in, year out.
South African students protest university fees every year. In 2017, then President Jacob Zuma ruled that higher education would be free for students whose household income is less than €20,000 per year. The rest would have to rely on student loans. The public body overseeing this system received more than 750,000 applications this year. Its spokesperson said that demand has doubled over the last 3 years and that the solution lies in partnership with the private sector.
South Africa cannot afford to help everybody because there isn't enough money from government. However, that model could work for private sector. If a private bank has a bursary and wants to give, they can outsource the administration of that with us. We can find the students for them.
Student groups have demanded that the government cancels all existing student debt across South Africa's 26 public universities. The Deputy Chair of Universities South Africa says this simply isn't an option.
The student debt that is still on the books for the sector is currently at about 14 billion rand. Now, it's just impossible to write that debt off without completely crippling the system.
The government has financed the studies of close to 4 million students from poor backgrounds but continues to struggle with growing demand year on year.
The grandmother of former US President Barack Obama has died in Kenya at the age of 99. Sarah Onyango Obama was the third wife of his paternal grandfather and seen as the matriarch of his extended family in Africa. She was also known for her philanthropy. Now nicknamed Mama Sarah by Kenyans, she spent her life providing food and education to girls and orphans. President Uhuru Kenyatta has called her passing a big blow to the nation, while her grandson, Barack, said her long and remarkable life would be celebrated with gratitude. And finally, we end the programme with a bit of Congolese music, courtesy of Fabregas' Le Métis Noir. Now, after having mastered the Congolese rumba genre, the artist is now trying something new. This July, Fabregas will release his first French-language album, which fuses urban sounds with the traditional melodies of his country. France 24's Harold Girard and Shirley Sitbon have this report.
Fabregas broke through with rumba music, but you won't hear any of that in his latest album, Radar. The musician is trying out new styles. This time, it's all urban music, a mix of rap and African sound.
It's like uncharted territory for me. It's a bit risky because my fans aren't used to hearing me perform with this style.
Most of Radar is about love and solidarity. Fabregas wants people to connect with each other.
I have 3 goals with music: helping my people build up, teach them, and train them. Then I want them to dance over my music, but that comes after the first 3 goals. I'm recording a song called Supernatural. I compose and record it at the same time. I'm creating right now.
The Congolese artist is known for composing in many styles, and he usually sings in Lingala. But his latest album is all in French. He wants to reach new listeners. Working under COVID hasn't been easy. Concerts have been canceled. Traveling is almost impossible. But at 33, he says he's confident.
I love challenges. I think that it's in those moments of obstacles and hardships that a man reveals himself. It's very hard, but I know that real things and true things are always hard.
His 7th solo album will be out and ready to be discovered in July.
Well, you're all up to date. There's more news coming up. Stay tuned.
France 24, your economy explained.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.
If you've spent any time here in France, you'll know that the French love to eat meat.
Whether it's coq au vin, bœuf bourguignon, steak tartare, foie gras, quiche Lorraine, duck, rabbit, all our famous dishes are meat heavy. The joke goes, it's hard to be a vegetarian in France.
But more and more people are becoming concerned about their health or the environment, and so their meat-eating habits are starting to change.
Join us for this episode of French Connections Plus, where we take a bite out of France's sizzling love affair with meat.
French Connections Plus on France 24 and France24.com.